Back in 2018, while I was busy with middle school, a little indie platformer called Celeste came out. At this time, it didn't really seem that special. I mean, we already seen a bunch of pixel art platformers. What could this one possibly do that we haven't seen before? Turns out, quite a lot. Celeste doesn't reinvent the wheel. It doesn't introduce some groundbreaking new mechanics that change the way platformers work. But what it does almost flawlessly. Everything about it feels polished, tight, and intentionally crafted. It's the kind of game where you can tell that the developers cared about every tiny detail. At first, it looks like a simple game about climbing a mountain, and technically, it is. But the more you play, the more you realize that the real mountain isn't made of rocks and snow. It's made out of fear, self-doubt, anxiety, and everything Madeline is trying to run from. You play as a girl named Madeline, though in my footage you'll see the name Ducky pop up. I assume that the game randomly generates names, only to find out later that it doesn't and it has a canonical name. Anyways, Celeste is more than just another difficult indie platformer. It's a story about trying to get better. Whether you're struggling with mental health, trying to make sense of your past, or just pushing yourself to prove that you can do something, Celeste resonates on a deeply personal level. So let's start at the beginning. Let's go to where Madeline's journey begins. Prologue opens with Madeline arriving at the base of the mountain. Here you're introduced to the core mechanics: wall climbing, dashing, and jumping. You also learn that when you dash, your hair turns blue. Why? I have no idea. You meet your first character here as well, Granny. Madeline asks her for directions to the mountain and complains about nearly dying on her driveway. Granny seems like a typical old lady at first. Cryptic, maybe a bit mean-spirited, saying things like, "The mountain might be a bit too much for you." But she's not wrong since Madeline nearly dies before even starting the climb. Later it becomes clear that Granny isn't just some bitter gatekeeper. She's a mentor figure and Madeline reminds her of her younger self. Before Madeline leaves, Granny warns her that the mountain can show you things that you're not ready to see. Madeline, of course, just shrugs it off like it's some crazy old lady's rant. After the prologue, we begin Chapter 1, The Forsaken City. It's a lonely, abandoned place full of grey buildings and empty streets. The background architecture reminds me a lot of Brutalist design, cold, sharp, and kind of lifeless. It feels like a place that people gave up on. This is where you really start to understand how Celeste plays. The game keeps things simple, just jumping, dashing, and wall climbing. That's the core of it. But later on, there are additions like the green dash crystal, and eventually a double dash, but for now, just you and the basics. Each chapter introduces some kind of new mechanic to keep things fresh. In Chapter 1, it's these moving platforms that react to your presence. Step on one and it will launch you forward. At first, it's just about getting from one side to the other, but as you move deeper into the level, you start to notice how the game wants you to think about the momentum. If you jump at the right time, you can keep the platform's momentum and use it to cross larger gaps. This is also where the game introduces strawberries, this game's main collectible. Some of them are just sitting there in the open, while others are placed in areas that are secretive or require extra effort. There's even a flying version that escapes if you dash in the same room, forcing you to reset and try again. None of them are necessary to complete the game, but they add a bit more challenge for the players who want it. Sometimes you can just walk straight through a room, but if you want the strawberry, you'll have to do something way harder. And this is also where we meet Theo, our second character. He's a photographer from a mystical and exotic kingdom of Seattle. He's here to take some cool photos for his Instapics account, which is basically this world's version of Instagram. And yes, it exists. You can actually find the photos he took throughout and after the game on Instagram. He's laid back, a bit goofy, and overall just a very relaxed person. But later on he becomes Madeline's emotional anchor, someone that Madeline can actually talk to, which makes his presence feel more important. But for now, he's just another climber doing his own thing. You can chat with him briefly and move on. At the end of the level, you arrive at the Celeste's Mountain Memorial. It's a quiet and somber place. This area seems to be where most climbers give up or straight up die, represented by the memorial at the top. Possibly a metaphor for all the players that have quit the game after the first chapter. Madeline also starts to question herself. Questions like, what is she doing, pop up. She realizes that this might actually be a bit too dangerous. that climbing this mountain might have been a mistake. The monologue here is short, but you can already feel doubt creeping in. And for the players to whom Celeste is not new, as it is a 7-year-old game, this could also be seen as the first subtle appearance of Madeline, even if she hasn't physically shown up yet. Chapter 2 begins with Madeline waking up at her campfire, but something immediately feels off. The fire is burning green, the stars are falling in the background, and the memorial from the last chapter has become unreadable with its letters constantly shifting. The whole space feels unfamiliar and dreamlike. The music adds to the feeling with a mysterious, slightly haunting melody playing in the background. And that's because none of this is real. The second chapter takes place entirely within a dream. This is also where we meet Celeste's so-called antagonist, Madeline. Early on, she's described as the mountain's vessel, something that reflects your true self. She isn't just a separate character, she's Madeline's doubts, fears, and intrusive thoughts given form. You could say she's the voice at the back of your head that's brutally honest, and with no real concern for how it makes others feel. She's a pragmatic and concerned part of Madeline, one that genuinely believes is trying to help. She tells Madeline she's not cut out for this, that she's not a mountain climber, and that she should turn back and go home. At first glance, those sound like traits you'd associate with caution and care, but here her words feel more discouraging than protective. She comes off less like a worried friend and more like that internal voice that always expects you to fail. The kind that tells you that you're not strong enough, not good enough, and that there's no point in you trying. In many ways, Madeline is a physical manifestation of Madeline's inner struggles. She doesn't come from nowhere, she escapes from Madeline's reflection, as if she's been waiting in the mirror the whole time, just looking for a chance to surface. If Madeline is driven by the belief that she can get better, then Madeline is the part of her that believes she never will. This whole chapter revolves around that dynamic. After the conversation, the music shifts from eerie to urgent, and the level turns into a chase sequence. Madeline follows you from room to room, mimicking your movements. If she touches you, you die. Some rooms even have multiple versions of her, forcing you to think fast and move with precision. It's intense, but it's also symbolic. Madeline at this point is not just running from monsters, she's running from herself. The main mechanic introduced here is the dream blocks. When you dash into one, it launches you in a straight line to the other side, then refreshes your dash when you exit. But if you dash into a wall, you're dead. It's fast, fluid, and incredibly satisfying once you get the hang of it. Once you escape the castle, she will stop following you. Eventually, the music fades out as you reach a telephone booth in the middle of nowhere. When Madeline answers the phone, a strange character with green hair, presumably her ex, picks up. She tries to explain to him what's happening, how she's been chased around and trapped in a bizarre world, but he doesn't seem surprised. He's more annoyed that she only calls him during breakdowns. As she explains the situation out loud to him, she starts to realize how crazy it all sounds, and then it finally clicks. She's dreaming. But before she can wake up, she's overwhelmed by doubt. She repeats the question that Madeline asked her earlier, why am I even climbing this mountain? That's when Madeline reappears, and this time she transforms into a massive monster, devouring Madeline whole. Madeline wakes up by the campfire once again, but this time she's back in the real world. Everything is back to normal. The fire burns orange, the memorial is readable, and the sky has returned to its calm, familiar state. It's easy to dismiss this as a bad dream, but something clearly changed. The feelings she experienced were too real to forget. Soon after, you run into Theo once again. He's lighthearted as always, which is a sharp contrast to the nightmare that Madeline just experienced. You talk to him for a bit, take a selfie together, and start to see more of Madeline's insecurities slip through. She doesn't like how she looks in the photos, possibly hinting at a struggle with self-image and confidence. After your conversation with Theo, you proceed on, eventually coming across a familiar phone booth. This time, instead of the phone ringing, Madeline is the one calling. She calls her mom. From their conversation, we learn that Madeline struggles with panic attacks often enough that her mom immediately knows how to help her calm down. It's a short exchange, but it tells us a lot. At this point, you could end the chapter, but if you choose to explore, you might stumble upon a strange blue heart trapped in a box. This is a crystal heart, another collectible like the strawberries but far more rare and much harder to obtain, and unlike the strawberries, they are used to unlock later optional chapters in the game. Near the heart is also an old book with a short poem, an apparition not of this world but because of it, lurking out of frame. Awake, my heart is a fortress. In dreams, I am vulnerable. It's both a hint for the puzzle and a metaphor for Madeline. She's not something that came from nowhere. She exists because of Madeline. She's always been there, just out of frame, waiting for a moment of weakness to appear. When Madeline is awake, she hides that part of herself away, not letting her dictate her emotions. But when she sleeps, she becomes vulnerable to those things she tries to ignore. That's why this chapter hits so hard. It lays the ground for Celeste's biggest theme, the battle with yourself. Running from your flaws, trying to suppress them, pretending they do not exist, it never works. Eventually, those parts of you catch up. The second chapter is one of the most meaningful in the game. It introduces Madeline, sets up the central conflict, and dives headfirst into topics like panic attacks, anxiety, and self-doubt. It's not just about the platforming anymore, it's about surviving. Not in the sense of spikes and pits, but emotionally. And the game's just getting started. After one of the most emotional and meaningful chapters in the game, Celeste follows it up with cleaning. Yeah, Chapter 3, The Celestial Resort, shifts the tone a bit and focuses on a new character called Mr. Oshiro. You start the chapter by entering an old, decaying hotel where you're immediately greeted by Mr. Oshiro, a ghostly hotel manager who's clearly not doing well. He offers you a room, even the presidential suite, despite the fact that you're obviously just passing through. You politely decline him, but he insists, leading you deeper into the hotel whether you like it or not. You follow him until you come to this labyrinth of a room where he admits that the place is in a complete disarray and he needs to clean it up, but he can't on his own. So naturally you offer to help him. Next time I should really check the hotel reviews before walking in. You're tasked with cleaning 3 specific messes: books, laundry, and boxes. Each one is hidden within a slime-like mass that disappears once you dash into it. Every time you clean one of these messes, the soundtrack subtly shifts. Clean the books and the music gets a spooky vibe to it. It's a clever way of reusing the soundtrack and making it feel like something new. The chapter's main mechanic is introduced here too, floating black blobs with red outlines that act as hazards. These represent Mr. Oshiro's stress and anxiety, and they cover the hotel like mold. You'll need to navigate around them, which gets tricky fast. While exploring the hotel, you might stumble across a secret room with a computer. Interacting with it starts Pico 8, which is one of the earlier versions of Celeste. It's a full-on retro minigame hidden in this already retro-style game. It doesn't unlock anything except an achievement, but I still spent 30 minutes beating it. Worth it? Probably not. Just outside Pico 8 room, you'll find a note confirming what we already suspected. The hotel is closed and has been for a long time. Still, Mr. Oshiro refuses to let go. And even after all this, Madeline insists on helping him, despite everything screaming at her to leave. It's only when you meet up with Theo again that you realize just how stubborn Madeline really is. Theo is already trying to get out and even warns you to leave. But no, you're still stuck on helping Oshiro. And there's definitely no way that could backfire. Leave me alone! After cleaning the final mess, you get access to the presidential suite. But when you catch up to Mr. Oshiro, he's already on the verge of breakdown. You walk through a few more rooms before arriving at the suite itself. And the first thing you see is a massive mirror. You already know what it means. Madeline tries to stay polite, complimenting the room, but you can tell that she's forcing it. Her speech bubbles even show hesitation. She's not being honest, and it's clearly taking a toll. Eventually, Madeline appears and tells Mr. Oshiro the truth. The hotel is a dump and he's a pathetic mess. Her words are harsh, but not entirely untrue. Here we see the aforementioned lack of regard for others' emotions. This moment is important because it's the first time that Madeline is speaking through Madeline. She says what Madeline feels but doesn't want to say. Outside, Madeline calls Oshiro pathetic one more time, and that's the breaking point. Whatever grip he had on himself is gone now. He transforms into a giant floating monster and starts chasing you around through the final stretch of the level. Eventually, you reach the edge of the roof. Madeline tries to reason with him one last time, but it's already too late. He smashes the roof, sending you both crashing down. After that, he turns back to normal, admits he is defeated, and closes the hotel for repairs, finally allowing you to leave. Personally, this was my least favorite chapter in the game. Not because of the story, but just the pacing and how it all plays out. So let's move on to something better. Chapter 4, The Golden Ridge. Chapter 4 shifts things again. Compared to the emotional weight of Chapter 2 and the anxiety-ridden tension of the hotel, this chapter is almost peaceful. It doesn't really move the story forward in any major way, not until the very end at least. Instead, it focuses entirely on platforming. The only bit of story we get comes at the very beginning. Madeline meets up with Granny once again and tells her about what happened at the Celestial Resort. Granny isn't exactly sympathetic. She tells Madeline the same thing that Theo and Madeline tried to say, that helping Mr. Oshiro was a waste of time and that she should stop getting distracted if she actually wants to climb the mountain. Madeline doesn't take this well. She snaps back at Granny, calling her just as crazy as Oshiro, and insists that she's not giving up on her climb. Granny responds with a line that, at the time, might not seem that important. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between stubbornness and determination, isn't it? This line becomes much more relevant later in the story, trust me. From there, the level opens up and lets the gameplay speak for itself. The gimmick here is the wind. Constant, brutal wind. It slows you down, messes your dashes, and makes any kind of mid-air control way harder than it should be. On top of that, the chapter introduces a few new mechanics. Bubbles that launch you in a chosen direction and refill your dash, clouds which give you a slight lift or a huge one if you time your jump correctly. There are also two types of them, pink ones that disappear after one bounce and blue ones that stay. Guided platforms that are activated once you stand on them or hold on to them. They are either self-guided when they don't have a pressure plate or they are controlled by the player. There's a lot happening here, but the game paces it well. Even with all the new elements, it never feels overwhelming. And the environment helps. The gentle music and the soft background give the level a calming atmosphere. Well, at least for the most part. For me, this was the first chapter that really tested my patience, and not because of any mechanics. There was this one room, and I was stuck there for what felt like forever. I recorded this playthrough as a let's play, so you'll see exactly what I mean. What am I supposed to do in this room? Hello? Did I soft lock myself? I can't go down, and all other rooms are closed. No, this jump is impossible. This is doing I know this is doing something, but I don't really know what at this point. It's not activating, it doesn't want to go up like other ones. Birds are the clue, I know it. Birds, like in chapter 1, they're gonna reveal something to me, some secret, I know it. Oh my god, what the fuck? You're telling me it was that easy all along? To you that probably seemed short, but to me it took 20 minutes. I figured out how to get the crystal heart in this chapter faster than I figured out how to get out of that room. Anyways, after surviving all that, you eventually meet back up with Theo. Together you climb into an old rusty gondola that definitely won't break down to cross the next massive gap in the mountain. The gondola almost immediately breaks down, the lever snaps off, Madeline appears, and the sky darkens into a twisted, stormy mess. The visuals almost immediately indicate what's happening here. Madeline is having a panic attack. The way the game shows this is brilliant. The background fades into darkness. The music, normally a soft piano, shifts into a blaring, alarm-like distortion. The tension builds, but then Theo steps in. He talks Madeline through this panic attack, and you as the player help her calm down by playing a simple minigame, keeping a feather floating inside a box. It sounds basic, but it represents breathing, slow, controlled, and focused. As the feather settles, the music starts to return to normal as Madeline begins to calm down. That leads me into something I've been meaning to talk about: the music. Lena Raine, the composer for Celeste, really put her heart into the soundtrack. She talked about how she related to Madeline's journey personally, and that emotion is clear in every piece of music. In most chapters, the music evolves over time. Take chapter 2 for example. It starts calm and mysterious, but as soon as Madeline breaks free, the drums kick in and everything feels more urgent. The Mirror Temple, which we'll get to next, starts off ominous, slow, and mysterious, but builds into something far more anxiety inducing. But the best example of music's impact is this chapter's gondola scene. When Madeline starts panicking, her piano theme fades out and is replaced by those harsh, blaring tones. But as soon as she calms down, the piano slowly returns. The music in Celeste honestly deserves its own video, and I wish I had the musical knowledge to break it all down in detail, but I don't. All I can really say is how it makes me feel. And for a game as stressful and challenging as Celeste, the soundtrack does a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to stress relief. It makes dying a little less frustrating and trying again feels possible. Anyway, after the panic attack passes, the gondola finally starts moving again, and you make it to the other side safely. Which brings us to the next chapter, the Mirror Temple. The Mirror Temple starts off simple enough. You and Theo are still climbing together and decide to explore this strange temple. You talk to him briefly and then he runs off to explore the temple. At first the area feels mysterious. The soundtrack reflects that calm, atmospheric, almost eerie vibe, but as you progress, things start to change. The deeper you go, the more anxiety-inducing the music becomes. You feel that something is building up, like the temple is reacting to you. Eventually, you come across a massive mirror. Madeline decides to be your average horror movie protagonist and comes close to the mirror, eventually getting pulled in. Before the mirror, while you went through the temple, you will see all kinds of statues of these weird creatures with one distinct eye and tentacles. These will be the enemies and obstacles for the rest of the level, and the game has a brilliant way of introducing you to this enemy. Once you enter the mirror world, one of these statues comes to life and you will play as that enemy. This will teach you the limitations and the mechanics of how this enemy works. Like it has a dash, it can destroy these red blocks, but it cannot go through the white barriers. Once you arrive in the mirror world, the soundtrack changes to something more menacing. Madeline also appears, and she will explain to you that everything you see in this temple is because of you. They are just another form of your doubts and fears taking physical forms. The monsters being some part of Madeline is also indicated by the red and blue color scheme that changes just like Madeline's hair. But nothing is going to stop you from finding your friend. Luckily, it doesn't take you too long to find Theo. But unlike you, he is not able to move right now as he is trapped. You see, most characters in the game experience some form of anxiety. Mr. Oshiro being worried about his ruined hotel, Theo with his obsession over how people perceive him on social media, represented in the Mirror Temple by these eyes that constantly watch him. They symbolize the pressure that he puts on himself to appear as best as he can for his followers on Instapics. And this is probably something that most people struggle with in real life. On social media everything looks dreamlike, but in reality it's not. For you to help him, you need to shatter the crystal shell, or how he says it, an expression of my physical negative energy or whatever. Seeing as you can't shatter the crystal on your own, you instead carry him with you. You have to get both you and Theo through the temple, and if either of you die, the other dies as well. But thankfully, it's not a long distance between you and the exit. In the final room, the closer you get to exiting the temple, you will be pushed back by this giant eye that is the source of Theo's imprisonment. And once you throw the crystal at the eye, Theo's crystal breaks and both you and him get out of the temple safe and sound. Chapter 6, fittingly called Reflection, begins with a long conversation between Theo and Madeline. Here she finally tells Theo about the part of her that has escaped, and the two of them talk about all sorts of things. Theo's sister, how Madeline reminds him of her, his relationship with his grandpa, who also once climbed this very mountain. Then the conversation takes a much more serious turn. Both Madeline and Theo open up about their problems and mental health issues. Madeline talks about how she left her home because she wanted to change, to become a better person. She admits that she has a tendency to fixate on stupid things that happened forever ago, something I really resonate with. She also mentions that she's barely keeping appearances and that it is exhausting, and we already know what happens when those appearances break. She talks about how depression feels and how hard it is, which is a bold and heavy topic for a game that looks so lighthearted on the surface. And as for how she copes with all of these problems, well, with some of the worst methods possible, drinking and presumably using Twitter. Theo opens up too here. He explains that he's on this journey to figure out what he actually wants in life, because every time he thinks he's found his calling, he ends up hating it. Thankfully, everyone in his life is patient and supportive. The only one putting pressure on him is himself. He's scared that he'll never figure out where he's going. Then the topic shifts back to Madeline. Madeline tells Theo she wants to destroy that part of herself, but Theo challenges that. He asks if destroying a part of yourself wouldn't hurt. He even suggests that maybe all that harm Madeline is causing could be some sort of twisted defense mechanism. Maybe she's not the enemy. Maybe she's trying to protect Madeline in the only way she possibly knows. This whole scene is a turning point. For the first time in the game, Madeline genuinely smiles. She feels understood, and to remember this moment, she asks Theo to take a selfie together. Something she'd never do earlier in the story. Then they both fall asleep by the fire. During the night, Madeline wakes up in her dream world, but this time she's determined to talk to Madeline directly. Unfortunately, the conversation doesn't go well. Well, actually, it's a whole disaster. The first thing Madeline says is that her other self isn't truly a part of her, but something she needs to leave behind. A cruel, paranoid, controlling part of herself. And in her mind, she probably thinks she's doing the right thing. But what she's really doing is insulting her other self. She tells Madeline that she doesn't need her anymore, that she's setting her free, which in reality is just abandoning her. And Madeline lashes out, rightfully so. This time Madeline is completely wrong. This moment itself is Madeline's biggest misstep. After her talk with Theo, she thinks she's found the answer. She thinks that letting go of her negativity is the solution, but that's not how healing works. You can't just cut away the parts of yourself that you don't like and expect everything to be okay. She doesn't realize that this is a mistake yet, but the mountain makes sure she does. Madeline knocks her off the cliff and Madeline literally hits rock bottom, falling all the way to the base of the mountain and destroying the relationship she's been avoiding all along. This is where the actual platforming chapter begins. You start underwater, and when you reach the land, you're introduced to a few new mechanics. A floating feather that lets you fly through the air briefly, bouncing orbs that launch you in different directions, and the main gimmick for this chapter, platforms that only move when you dash into them. As you move through this area, Madeline reflects on everything that just happened. She says she hates Madeline, but realizes what that truly means, that she hates herself. She starts reaching the right conclusion. Along the way, you meet Granny again. She laughs at you for falling down, but also gives Madeline something important: perspective. She suggests that maybe Madeline isn't that bad, she's just scared. That maybe she's not trying to hurt Madeline, but protect her. That she's not the villain, just afraid. And that's the moment where everything shifts. For the first time in the game, the physical climb of the mountain becomes secondary. Madeline decides to stop running from her other self and instead goes to confront her. Not to destroy her, but to reach her. She descends deeper into the mountain and finds her other self. But this time, Madeline isn't willing to talk. After all, Madeline told her she wants nothing to do with her. Why would she trust her now? But Madeline doesn't back down. She tells her the truth, that neither of them are perfect, that both of them made mistakes, but if they can work together, they can keep going. She doesn't want to get rid of Madeline anymore. She wants to climb together. Madeline doesn't believe her. She's scared. She thinks that Madeline will just try to abandon her again. And then, the chase begins. But unlike Chapter 2, this time Madeline is not being chased, instead she's doing the chasing. You follow Madeline through countless rooms filled with lasers, spinning orbs, collapsing platforms, and tight jumps. The sequence is long and difficult, but it's also symbolic. Eventually, after going through countless rooms, you find Madeline curled up and defeated. And this time, Madeline doesn't run or lash out. She kneels down, reaches out, and comforts her. She doesn't try to erase her, overpower her, or silence her. She embraces her. They finally merge together, not one part overpowering the other, but two parts finally becoming one whole. With the merge comes a new ability, a double dash. Now not only can Madeline dash twice in mid-air, but Madeline herself will help launch you upwards through long vertical sections. This change doesn't just make the gameplay more exciting, it reflects their unity. You meet up with Granny and Theo again to let them know you overcome the biggest challenge of the game, not the mountain, but yourself. And in this moment, it becomes clear just how scared Madeline really was. Even after helping you climb faster and higher, she's still anxious, still unsure, which just proves that she was never the villain. The antagonistic presence of Madeline wasn't about anger, it was about concern, about fear. In her own way, she was just trying to protect Madeline. She wanted to bring her back home, lock her up in a metaphorical cage where nothing could hurt her. But that's not what Madeline needs. It's not what either of them need. And now, for the first time, they both understand that. Together they set off, ready to climb, not just to the summit of the mountain, but towards something better. Chapter 7 is the final test and a journey through everything you've learned so far. It takes you through each chapter one by one, but with shorter and more challenging versions of their mechanics. You revisit the Forsaken City, Old Site, Celestial Resort, Golden Ridge, Mirror Temple, Reflection, and finally, the summit itself. Each section is harder than it was the first time, but you're stronger now, you've changed, and that's kind of the point. Between each segment, Madeline and Madeline grow closer. As they soar from one area to the next, they apologize to each other, they reflect, they regret not trying to understand each other sooner. And now, even if they don't make it to the top, they'll be okay with that. They've already climbed the metaphorical mountain, the physical one doesn't matter nearly as much. Now that we're nearing the end, it's worth pausing to talk about what this game means. Because Celeste isn't just a story about reaching the summit, it's an allegory and it's open to a lot of interpretations. The mountain is both a literal and symbolic challenge. On one hand, it's a brutal physical journey, tight jumps, relentless hazards, constant death. But on the other hand, it represents something deeper. Madeline's mental health, her personal growth, and her inner conflict. You could see the game in a myriad of different ways. For example, that you need to do new things, even if they're terrifying. That you can't live your whole life in a cage, doing the exact same thing over and over again, expecting things to change. So go ask that person out, go apply for that job, go climb that mountain, or whatever your heart desires. Celeste is also about identity. Madeline canonically is trans. And for many players, the game's journey of self-acceptance takes on even deeper meaning. The battle with Madeline isn't just about fear and doubt, it's about reconciling with every part of yourself, even the ones that don't always feel welcome. There's also a reading about addiction. Madeline briefly mentions drinking, and it's easy to imagine that her climb is as much about confronting unhealthy coping mechanisms as it is about scaling cliffs. There are so many ways to interpret this story. And the best part is, none of them are wrong. The mountain means something different to everyone, and that's what makes this journey so special. Now, back to the actual climb. You pass save point after save point. 25, 18, 11, 9, 5, 4, where I did have a bit of a stumble with picking up a certain strawberry. What? Oh my god, the whole roof is filled with these spikes. The whole roof is spikes. Just a bit more. Almost there. And finally you see it. The red flag marking the finish line. The music fades as you approach. There's no boss fight, no final twist. Just quiet, peace, a moment to breathe. Madeline and Madeline stand together, not as enemies, not as separate halves, but as one. They've made it. Even though they won't be able to speak to each other like this again, they healed what needed healing. Their relationship is stronger than ever, and for the first time it feels like Madeline is finally at peace with who she is. After this, we get an ending cutscene of you and Madeline enjoying yourselves while descending down the mountain, with images of your journey passing periodically. Back at Granny's house, everyone is waiting for you. Theo is there, even Mr. Oshiro shows to celebrate. Together, you bake a delicious strawberry pie using all the strawberries you collected throughout the game. The more you gathered, the better the reaction from the guests will be. They either rave about how amazing the pie is, or wonder why the pie barely has any strawberries in it at all. For me, my first playthrough ended with 2,248 deaths, 10 hours and 44 minutes played, and 154 strawberries collected. Not too bad. And now, you might be wondering, if this is the end of the game, why isn't the video over yet? Well, because after the climb to the summit, there's still more. There are 2 additional chapters, both of which take place after the events of the main story. Chapter 8, The Core, takes place about a year after the events of the main game. It begins with a dialogue with Granny who tells you about a mysterious cave she discovers, a path that leads straight to the center of the mountain. To even access this chapter though, you need to have collected at least 4 crystal hearts. And just like that, the game tells you this isn't casual bonus level. It's a test for players who truly commit to exploring everything Celeste has to offer. The core introduces a few new mechanics and some clever twists on the older ones. You'll find launching blocks that act like pink clouds from earlier chapters, boosting you with timed jumps. There are constantly moving obstacles similar to what we see in the Mirror Temple, but the most important mechanic is the heat and cold system. Throughout the level, you'll find glowing hearts that, when activated, shift the entire room between 2 states: a magma-filled hellscape where everything burns, or a frozen icy version of the same room where fire becomes solid and the walls freeze over. Each version has its benefits and drawbacks. In the cold state, the deadly flames become platforms you can jump on, but now many of the walls are frozen, which removes your ability to wall climb. Personally, this is my favorite level visually. The pixel art here is stunning. The moment I saw the volcano-like background, it immediately reminded me of Terraria. Honestly, this whole game is beautiful, but the core takes it to another level. There's even a subtle aesthetic detail with screen transitions. When you die or reset, instead of swiping transitions like before, the screen transitions with a heart. It's a small touch, but it really adds to the whole feel that this chapter is something different. Unlike the previous chapters, this one is almost entirely focused on gameplay. There's barely any dialogue, Madeline doesn't show up, Theo isn't here, no Granny, it's just Madeline and the mountain. As you get closer to the end, the visuals begin to shift. The final room takes on a strange purplish hue, almost like the hot red and icy blue states are blending together. Eventually those colors fade and you reach something new. A space of quiet. Translucent platforms suspended in an empty, peaceful void. In this area, you cannot die. If you fall into the abyss, you simply reappear at the top. It feels dreamlike and safe. At the end of the space, you'll find a crystal heart. But for the first time, it's not hidden behind a puzzle or locked behind some secret, it's just there, waiting for you. This chapter, with its lack of dialogue and external conflict, feels like Madeline has finally found peace. There's no voice pulling her back, there's no mental mountain to climb, no relationship to repair. She's already done the work, and now she's just moving forward, for herself. She's simply continuing the journey because she wants to, and that's something she wasn't able to do before. The final image of this chapter is of Madeline alone in a quiet, glowing space surrounded by calmness. Now that we achieved canonical inner peace, it's time to bring in some real-life emotional distress, because that's what Chapter 9, Farewell, is all about. This chapter was released as a free DLC sometime after the game's launch, and it is, without exaggeration, the hardest and longest level in all of Celeste. It opens with a short but powerful cutscene. Madeline visits Granny's grave, but she's gone. and Madeline still can't come to terms with it. She tells Madeline that she didn't even go to the funeral. She can't explain why, she just couldn't do it. While they talk, the bird that has appeared a few times throughout the game shows up. In a mix of denial and desperation, Madeline decides to follow it, believing it might be part of Granny. Even Madeline calls her out, saying that it's probably just a bird and that Madeline is clearly in denial. Still, Madeline follows, and somehow this journey leads her to space? For the most of Chapter 9, you don't have access to your double dash. Madeline refuses to help you on what she sees as a delusional quest to bring back someone who's already gone. Instead, you have to rely on pink crystals that give you a limited double dash for each segment. The chapter starts off manageable, but with every room, things escalate. You're pushed further into suffering, and that being gameplay-wise. And since I recorded my entire Celeste playthrough, I think now is the perfect time to let you see the pain I experienced firsthand. And people say this is the hardest level. This is gonna be the easiest thing I have ever done. Look at this. Don't look at this. No, nah, this is the winning run. See the technique? I told you. I told you. Now the next room, first try. Look at this. Don't look at this. This time it's the perfect run. I have downloaded the entire moveset. I know how to do it. I told you. I do this every time. Easy. Now first try. Okay, the last key. Come on. Oh my god. Is this the end? Look how cheerful the music is. Everything is much lighter. Is this the end? Are we done? Will the game be nice to me finally? I'm actually feeling like I'm good at this game. This feels like progress. This feels like I'm good at something in this game. I am actually terrible at this game. The worst player ever. I don't know how did I ever get to this point. I'm so bad. Reverse psychology, I got it on my first try. Didn't even sweat. Now what is this room? So I have to bounce all the way up there. Seems easy enough. I got this. This is my room. I have actually never played a worst game in my life. This room is terrible. I have never played through a worst platforming section in my life. Nothing in this game comes close to what this room is for me. It is the worst room ever. So I come back from home. I work 10-hour shift. I work construction. I come back home to have fun on playing video games. And what do I do for fun? I die to pixelated spikes, hours on end. At this point, I'm becoming a philosopher. I'm pondering whether ripping my own balls is more fun than this room. This is the worst room I have ever played through. Who designed this? I want to know who designed this room. I don't want to see this room ever again. Ever in my life. Not even close. Not even close. I didn't even sweat. Those spikes were so far away from me. Okay, get up. Get up now. Okay, I know what I have to do. I have to get up. I have to jump and then dash. Okay. Now get up. Get up quickly. Jump. Dash into the... Get the dash. I got it. I got it. This is my run. Oh my god. It's finally over. We're at the heart. It's finally done. What do you mean this can't be the end? Take the heart. Look at the moves. Look at the mechanics. Look at the mechanics. Okay, now look at this. Look at the moves. Look at the mechanics. Not even close. The spikes don't know me. Okay, the bird is here. I got it. Fuck. A wave dash? It's the easiest thing I have ever done in my life. The easiest thing. This bird, I'm gonna throw it into a KFC bucket. The bird and I are actually getting close. We're becoming friends. I decided not to throw it in the KFC bucket, at least for now. What do I do here? What do I do here? And the bird just tossed me into the electricity. I'm actually killing the bird once again. It's getting slaughtered again. These sections with wave dashing are so satisfying once you know how to do them. But right now I'm just feeling pain and suffering. Okay, a bit of fun, a bit of fun. A bit of fun. No more fun. No more fun. I had my fun. It's actually fun. I think I'm having fun. I'm not having fun. I'm actually just not having fun. What? No, no, please, please, please. Okay, 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 okay. Okay, I saved it. I saved it. Oh my god, I thought I was done for. Eventually, after hours of grinding, you see it. A crystal heart. Finally some hope. Some relief. You reached it, ready to end this madness. And then as you pick it up, the screen glitches and the heart shatters. It's not over yet. Because Madeline isn't satisfied. She's still not ready to let go. Remember way back in chapter 4 when Granny said, "Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between stubbornness and determination, isn't it?" Well, this is that moment. This is where Deadline becomes Madeline in a nutshell. You keep pushing forward until you're stopped by a massive wall, one you've already seen in chapter 8. To proceed, you'll need to acquire 15 crystal hearts. Now you might be asking, how do I get 15 when there are only 9 chapters and there's only 1 crystal heart in each? Well, here's the thing I haven't mentioned until now. Scattered throughout the game are hidden cassettes. Collecting them unlocks B-sides, a way harder versions of each chapter. If at any point during the game you thought, I wish this level was twice as hard, then B-sides have you covered. To put it into perspective, this is the hardest room in the regular chapter. Quite easy, right? And this is the easiest room in the B-side. But despite their difficulty, I honestly had the most fun in the B-sides. They're brutal but fair. They push you in the best way possible. B-side 6 was probably my favorite. There were moments where I would kill for some solid ground, but then they hit you with a sexy guitar soundtrack. You're feeling down because you can't beat something? Sexy guitar soundtrack. You're flying through spikes, dodging lasers, feeling good? Again with the guitar. Once you get through each B-side and gather enough hearts, you'll finally be able to break through the wall. And you think, surely this is the end. But sadly, this is just the beginning. You see, Chapter 9 also does something I haven't seen other games do. It forces and teaches casual players to learn speedrun mechanics, such as wave dashing, which you will have to use and master if you want to complete this chapter. It's an incredible way to incorporate community's discoveries and tactics into the actual game. To pull off a single wave dash, you have to dash diagonally into the ground, jump at the perfect moment, and preserve your momentum. Too early and you fall short. Too late and your dash won't refresh. It's tricky enough when you're on stable ground with all the time in the world, but when you're doing it repeatedly on collapsing platforms with no room for error, it can be a bit frustrating. At this point, some rooms require chains of advanced tech just to get past a single section. About 70% through the chapter, Madeline returns, and she finally talks to you. Once again, this entire level is happening inside Madeline's mind, which is more obvious than ever. You're literally in space chasing a bird. And Madeline even asked about the lack of oxygen at one point. But Madeline's stubbornness is at full power. She refuses to stop. She has to catch that bird. She believes it's a part of Granny. Here, Madeline becomes like a voice of reason. She tries to pull Madeline back from her obsession, and the dynamic is reflected in the gameplay too. When Madeline reaches the crystal heart, that would normally end the level, but she refuses to take it. She keeps going because she is not ready. But eventually, after one final conversation, Madeline realizes that this is pointless, that she needs to let go. But before she leaves, there is one more thing to do. Set the bird free. This is the final stretch. The bird becomes a gameplay mechanic now, launching you through the room in a fast-paced sequence. And as you are finally speeding through the game, you hope that end is near. But that hope ends in the final room. This room is hell. In Celeste, most rooms take a few seconds to clear if you do everything right. This one is 2 straight minutes of perfect execution. No checkpoints, no breaks. You need to string together every advanced mechanic the game has thrown at you flawlessly. It's the single hardest thing in the entire game. I was stuck here for a very long time, just dying, over and over again. Hours of mental torment, my sanity slowly eroding. But finally, at this point, I beat it. You're launched into the sky by Madeline for the very last time into a glowing white void. And there, one final time, you see Granny. Just for a moment, but that moment is enough. When you wake up, there's a short cutscene. Madeline talks to Theo about Granny, about how her death affected her. We basically hear again what we already understood throughout this chapter. She wasn't ready to let go, and this journey was her way of processing grief. The game ends with Theo showing a picture of his grandpa and Granny in their youth when they climbed the mountain, and we see that Granny looked almost exactly like Madeline, possibly sparking a theory that Madeline was actually related to her. And with that, we reach the end. Now, just to clarify, I haven't beaten everything. I still haven't collected the Moonberry, I haven't finished all the seasides, but for now, I think I'm going to take a break. Celeste is an incredible game with an incredible story, one that can be interpreted in so many ways, letting players find a piece of themselves in Madeline. But for me, it doesn't quite reach the top of greatest stories in the game list. As I've said in my previous videos, I tend to love games with soft world building, where the environment, the world tells the story. Celeste is more direct, more introspective, and while I admire that, it didn't fully connect with me. But that doesn't take away from what Celeste accomplishes. As a platformer, it's one of the best I've ever played. The movement is clear, tight, fast-paced, and incredibly satisfying. The visual design is fantastic, and the music, well, as I said before, it deserves its own video. Lana Rain didn't just compose the soundtrack, she built an emotional core of the game. So here's my honest review. Celeste gets the score of 9 strawberries out of 10. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, I thank you so much, I really do appreciate it. If you notice any editing mistakes or have thoughts of your own to share, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing and leaving a comment. That might not sound a lot to you, but to me it really means a lot. And finally, thanks again for watching, and goodbye.